Okay, so hi everyone. So in the previous lab, we spoke about snapshots, volumes, and AMIs, and even creating snapshots on a schedule, which was called as Data Lifecycle Manager. So now what we are going to look at is we are going to look at Elastic IP, right? So right now, this particular EC2 instance called My Web Server, right? So this EC2 instance has a public IP over here, which we pasted on the browser, and we were able to see it. So now what happens if I go ahead and stop and start this EC2 instance? So let's go ahead and stop and start this EC2 instance. So I'm going to click on actions, instance state, stop, and I'm going to stop my EC2 instance. So the second that I stop my EC2 instance, right? So let me just scroll down. Let me take that EC2 instance and filter based on it. I have some EC2 instances over here. So it's filter called as my web server. Okay. So you can see this guy is in the stopping state. So once he has gone to the stopped state, we'll just wait for him to go to the stop state. You will see that he will lose his public DNS and its public IP, right? Because the public DNS is something that is formed based on your public IP, and your public IP is something that is coming from the Amazon pool of public IPs, but it's not something called as a static IP or an elastic IP because it does not stay through restarts, through stops and starts of your virtual machine. So once this guy has come to the stop state, you will see that it will retain its private IP and its private DNS because this is something that is coming from the VPC and from the subnet, but it will lose its public IP and its public DNS. So what we can do over here is, if we start this EC2 instance again, we will get a public IP that is different from that was there previously. So now if I just refresh this guy, it's not going to resolve because this is that EC2 instance that we have stopped right now. So if we go ahead and start this again, we'll get a new public IP. But instead of that, we would like to have an elastic IP associated with this EC2 instance so that even through stops and starts, I would like to maintain that public IP or that elastic IP, right? So let me go down and let me click on elastic IPs over here. And let me allocate a new elastic IP for myself. So I'm going to click on allocate elastic IP. So you can see that it will come from Amazon's pool of IPv4 addresses, or you can also have it from customer owned pool or a public IPv4 setting that you bring to your AWS account. But because these guys have been disabled right now because it hasn't found any. But right now we will go with Amazon's pool of IPv4 addresses for elastic IP. So this elastic IP is a static IP. So now an elastic IP has been created for us. This is that elastic IP. Let's go ahead and associate this elastic IP right now. So we can go ahead and click on associate elastic IP on top. And you can see that we can associate it to the instance or to the network interface that is attached to that instance. So we are going to go to that instance. We are going to choose that instance called as my web server, which is in the stop state. So this is the my web server, which is in the stop state. And the private IP, whatever existing private IP was there, I'm going to associate the same private IP. And I'm going to go ahead and click on associate. So once I associate this elastic IP, I go back to instances and I click on this guy. You can see that it's now in blue color and it has a star over here. And this same elastic IP has been associated as the IPv4 public IP also. And it has got a public DNS also right now, even though it's in the stop state. Now, if I start this guy, it's in state and start, it's going to automatically start. And this public IP or this elastic IP through which the public IP has been set will never be modified. So even though we stop and start this how many ever times that we want, this particular my web server, this is the elastic IP that is going to be associated with it. But now let's look at one more concept regarding network interfaces and elastic IP. So one more concept regarding that is an EC2 instance can have a network interface. An EC2 instance can have multiple network interfaces also if it needs, if it requires. So then it will have multiple private IP addresses too. So we will go down to Elastic Network Interface and we'll go ahead and create a network interface. And we are going to give the description as my web server ENI. And I'm going to choose the subnet to be US East 1A. And you can see the private IP will be auto assigned from that subnet itself. And you can see that the security group it is asking us to choose because to the ENI is where your security group is attached. So I'm not going to choose any security group over here, but even if I want to, I can go ahead and choose that my web server SG. So let me go down and let me find that out. So let me search my web server SG. So we do have one over here. I'm going to go ahead and create this ENI. So once I create this ENI, what's going to happen right now is this ENI that we created is going to be in the available status. It's not going to be in the in use status. It's going to be in the available status. So let's go ahead and associate this ENI to that EC2 instance. So how do you associate it? Click on the ENI that is in the associate available status. Go ahead and click on attach. And we can choose the instance to which we want to attach this ENI. So you can see my web server, which is in the running status. I'm going to go ahead and click on attach. So now this ENI is going to go into the in use status. And you can see over here, this ENI's private IP, which is 172.31.93.100, is associated with that instance. So now this my web server has two private IPs, which is coming one from one ENI and this guy is coming from the other ENI, right? So we chose the US East 1A availability zone for the EC2 instance, but let's just check whether this ENI is residing within the same availability zone or from a different availability zone. So let's go down to ENIs, network interfaces, and let's see the availability zone to which it's attached. So you can see over here, this is my web server ENI. Yeah, this is the one that we created. It's also within the US East 1A availability zone. Okay, so that's great. So we can go back to instances, and I'm just showing you that this is also possible that you can associate multiple ENIs to your EC2 instance so that it can have multiple private IP ranges. And you can see that even though that ENI could give it a public IP, since we already have an elastic IP associated with it, it's going to have and retain only that elastic IP, right? So we are going to copy this elastic IP and paste it on the browser instead of this guy, which is not resolving, which was the previous public IP of that same EC2 instance. We are going to put the elastic IP and we can see we get hello world. So how many ever times we stop and start, we will still retain our elastic IP. So some more things regarding the ENI. So we created our ENI, we gave it a private IP from that availability zone and so on. So all these things are fine. What would happen if we created an ENI in another availability zone and associated it with an EC2 instance in another availability zone? Would that be possible? Let's try it out. So we'll create a network interface. We'll call this as so our previous EC2 instance is in US East 1A. So let's create this ENI in US East 1B availability zone. And then we are going to allow the private IP to be auto assigned from that subnet range itself. And then we are going to choose the same my web server SG. So you have chosen the security group. Go ahead and create. So this ENI has been created right now. It should be in the available status. So this guy. So it's in the available status. It's in the US East 1B availability zone. So now let's try to attach this to an EC2 instance in US East 1A. Let's see if it works or not. So click on attach. So it told you that no EC2 instances were found in this VPC because the ENI that you associate with that EC2 instance and even the volume that you associate with that EC2 instance should all be within the same availability zone. If it's not within the same availability zone, then what happens is you are not able to attach that ENI to that EC2 instance. Got the idea? So it's not possible to create an ENI in a different availability zone where you have your EC2 instance in a totally different availability zone. It will never work, right? Okay, so other than all of these settings, I just wanted to show you that. But other than all of these settings, one more thing that it's very, very important is how do you monitor the network traffic that goes through your ENI, right? So what, I mean, all the network traffic that goes through your ENI, like the TCP traffic or the SSH traffic or the HTTP traffic, all these traffic goes through your ENI. How do you monitor all of these traffic? And that's called as flow logs. So you can create a flow log for this particular ENI alone, or you can create a flow log on the subnet level, which means all the ENIs within that subnet, or you can create the flow log at the VPC level. So we will see the flow logs at the VPC and the subnet level when we study about VPC. But then when you create the flow log at the VPC level, literally all the subnets within that VPC, literally all the ENIs within that subnet will be logged. And what will be logged? You will be able to find out what was the protocol on which they accessed, what was the port number on which they accessed, what is the source IP, what is the destination IP, what is the, I mean, accept or reject, what kind of traffic it was, and so on. So all of these details will be available as part of your flow log, right? We will see that when we talk about VPC, but just know that we also have flow log configuration, and this flow log can be stored in S3 or it can be stored in CloudWatch logs. So later we will see about CloudWatch logs, but since you know about S3, you can create the flow log and you can choose to have all traffic being monitored rather than only accept or reject. And you can choose the destination to be sent to an S3 bucket, and you can put the S3 bucket's ARN over here, right? And you can see that this will be the format. So you will have the version, you'll have the account ID, you'll have the ENI ID, you'll have the source address, the destination address, source port, destination port, protocol number for whether it's TCP, protocol number is 6. You would have studied this in CCNA. UDP protocol number is 17. And then you'll have how much packets were transferred, how many bytes was transferred, what is the start and the end, and then you have the action, which is accept or reject, and then you have the log status, which is okay or not, right? So all of these details will be present within your flow log, right? So we can send it to an S3 bucket. So I'll not show you this right now because we are going to enable flow log at the VPC level later. But just for you to note regarding network interfaces, there are 2 points that I would like you to remember. The network interface is something that presents you with a public IP and a private IP. You can associate an elastic IP to a network interface or directly to that EC2 instance, which means it goes to that network interface internally. The network interface is where you have your security group associated with it. And always remember that the network interface that you create in one availability zone associated to that EC2 instance in the same availability zone. Don't create a network interface in some other availability zone and then try to associate it with an EC2 instance in some other availability zone. It will never work, right? And then even for your network interface, you can monitor all of your traffic that goes through it by enabling a concept called as flow logs, right? And your network interface will have a constant MAC address that is being associated with it. And then you can see over here, this particular network interface that we chose over here has an elastic IP associated with it, which is in blue color and denoted with a star. That's how you determine an elastic IP. And when you create the network interface for that particular availability zone, you will also get a private IP, right? All of the other settings are not that important for the exam, but we will anyway study that later. And once you create the network interface, you can attach it to the EC2 instance, or you can detach it from the EC2 instance, or you can delete that network interface, or you can go ahead and associate any other IP address that you would like, right? So these are some of the concepts that I would like you to remember regarding network interfaces and regarding elastic IP, right? So, and we associated this elastic IP. So one thing regarding the cost aspect is that for every elastic IP that you create, there is a charge associated with it. So always remember to deallocate or disassociate your elastic IP and then release your elastic IP so that you don't have any charges associated with it, right? So other than all of these concepts, one very important concept that we are going to study today is regarding placement groups, right? So we saw security groups. I'm not going to recap because we already saw that. We all know what key pairs are. We now know what network interfaces are. We know about elastic IP. So one thing that is left over here is called as placement groups. So let's go ahead and look at one particular slide that I have created for the placement group. So I'm going to click on present. Okay, cool. So I find it very interesting to do slides with Lucidchart. Right now, I would like to give out a shout out to Lucidchart for, all of the features that they provide regarding AWS diagrams or slides that they can create. So many features. I love Lucidchart right now. So, okay. So when it comes to placement groups, you can use placement groups to influence the placement of your group of independent EC2 instances to meet the needs of your workload. So there are 3 types of placement groups. You may not understand the definition of a placement group until you learn about the 3 types of placement groups. So we are going to study these in detail. So you can see that we have something called as a cluster placement group. We have something called as a spread placement group. And then we have something called as the partitioning placement group. Okay, sorry about the spelling mistake over there. So we are going to look at the cluster placement group first. So regarding the cluster placement group, you can see over here that we have an AWS cloud. We have an AWS region, which is US East 1A probably, US East 1, Northern Virginia. And then we have an availability zone, which is US East 1A probably. And within which we have, let's say at least 6 or 7 EC2 instances. The reason why we club all of these EC2 instances within the same availability zone is that because we have a logical grouping over there. And with this logical grouping, what benefits do we get? So we get applications that require very low latency, very high network throughput, like at least 10 Gbps of network throughput. And it is very much recommended when the majority of the traffic is between the EC2 instances in that placement group. And it also states that you can use instance types that support that enhanced networking capability in order to get much better network performance when you place all of your EC2 instances within the same AZ. So cluster placement group does not span across multiple availability zones. Cluster placement group spans only within the same availability zone, right? So only within the same availability zone, you can have at least 7 or 10 or more than that. The number of EC2 instances that you have, just so that you get very low latency and very high network throughput between those EC2 instances that you have within the cluster placement group. So it's a logical grouping. and they always recommend you to use enhanced networking supported EC2 instances like the C5 series or the M5 series. I mean, you can Google them. You can Google and find out as to what are the enhanced networking instance types. So, I mean, just to show you right now, I'll probably escape from the screen and I'll Google and show you. So you can always type enhanced networking instance types on Google, and you can find out that these are the instance type that supports enhanced networking. So you can use any one of these EC2 instances to launch it into a cluster placement group to get that kind of networking capability in terms of very high network throughput and very low latency, right? So going to the next placement group, this particular placement group is called as the spread placement group. This guy can span across multiple availability zones, but just for the diagram purpose, I have put it within one availability zone. So this is a group of instances that are placed on their own rack within the availability zone, each having its own network and power source, right? So if this is considered to be one rack, within that rack you have an EC2 instance. So this guy has its own network and power source. This guy has its own network and power source. This guy has its own network and power source. The only reason why you would have something like this is because when we have a small number of critical instances that should be kept separate from each other. So if suppose there is a failure on one of these racks where one of the EC2 instances fails, you will still be able to have availability for the other EC2 instances that are spread across other racks, right? So even if one rack fails, you will still have, I mean, power source and network capability for the other racks to probably serve your end users and customers. So in that way, you can place your EC2 instances across, I mean, multiple different racks where in the spread placement group, they have their own network and power source. So consider this to be a rack within which you have an EC2 instance that's having its own power source and network capability, right? So just to minimize your failure. Okay, so keeping this in mind, let's go to the next one, which is called as partition placement group. So with the partition placement group, it's pretty similar, right? This can also span across multiple availability zones. So where you call this as one partition, you call this as the other partition, you call this as the other partition. So within each partition, you can have a set of EC2 instances. That's possible. So within the availability zone or within multiple availability zones, within a partition, you can have a logical grouping of EC2 instances. The only reason you would do something like this is it will reduce the likelihood of correlated hardware failures. And you generally divide this into logical segments called as partitions. And each partition has its own set of racks. So each partition for each EC2 instance within that partition has its own set of racks. So in that way, each rack has its own network and power source. So this is generally used when you want to go for distributed workloads like I mean HBase or Hadoop related workloads, or running a NoSQL or managed Cassandra database or something like that. You would use this particular type of placement group. So EC2 generally tries to evenly distribute your instance across each partition, right? But you can also launch the EC2 instance into a specific partition that you can choose. And this partition placement group and the spread placement group both can span across multiple availability zones. So this is the difference between going with partitioning spread. And then finally, cluster placement group is something where you have only your EC2 instance within one single availability zone, right? And this is where you use enhanced networking type of EC2 instances to get low latency and high network throughput. So this is not asked that much in the exam, but then just for you to note how you would do this on the console, I'll just show you that. So you can see on the EC2 console, you have something called as placement group, right? So in this placement group, we already have one cluster placement group. I mean, two cluster placement groups over here, one spread placement group and one partition placement group. So you can see over here, we have 5 partitions that we have created for this partition placement group. So the way you create a placement group is pretty simple. Click on create placement group and click on the, I mean, give it a name. So my spread, let's just call it as my spread placement group. And you can choose the placement strategy to be of type spread and click on create. But if you choose to have partition placement group, partition, you can go ahead and choose my partition placement group. Sorry. Yeah, you can choose the partition placement group where you have to choose the number of partitions that you would like. So the reason why we have to choose the number of partitions is because in spread placement group, each and every EC2 instance itself gets its own rack. But when it comes to partition placement group, each partition that hosts multiple different EC2 instances get its own rack, right? So that partition itself gets its rack. And in that way, we will be able to run distributed workloads and so on. So we will have to specify the number of partitions that we would like to get and click on create group. But right now we already have a partition placement group, a spread placement group, and a cluster placement group. Now I'll show you one small catch over here. what happens if we place, what happens if we create an EC2 instance that is not of type enhanced networking type. We saw the enhanced networking type as C5, M5, and so on. What happens if we try to go ahead and do a T2 micro, whether we will be able to place the T2 micro in a cluster placement group. So let's just check that, and where do we choose our placement group. So when you go ahead and create an EC2 instance and you choose the AMI, and then you choose the T2 micro, and you go ahead and configure instance details, you can see over here we have something called as placement group. But when you go ahead and try to add this to an existing placement group, it only shows you the spread and partition placement group. It doesn't show you the cluster placement group, because for cluster placement groups, you got to choose enhanced networking type of EC2 instances. So let's go to the previous screen. Let's go ahead and choose the M5 AD extra large. So M5 AD large. So this is of type enhanced networking capability, this M5 AD large. So now let's go ahead and click on configure instance details. So I say that I want to continue with the M5 AD large, and I want to add it to a placement group. And now you can see that we have our cluster placement groups also mentioned over here. So always remember, with cluster placement group, you have to go with an enhanced networking type of EC2 instance. And we have the enhanced networking types over here listed. So these guys are the enhanced networking types of EC2 instance that you can launch within a cluster placement group. And all the others can be supported with the spread and partition placement group. So for more details, you can go through the AWS docs, but just remember that you have 3 types of placement groups that you can choose, right? And depending on your workload or depending upon your capability. So again, when I want to recap, for cluster placement groups for very low networking, for a very high networking throughput and very low latency, you would go with one of the enhanced networking types like M5 AD large or C5 or something like that, or i3 type of series. And for spread placement group, where each and every EC2 instance gets its own rack. So I mean, if suppose one rack fails, you will still have access to all of your other EC2 instances within that same availability zone or across availability zones. And for when it comes to the partition placement group, you can create partitions. And for each partition, you can have up to 7 EC2 instances. So that means you can go up to 7 partitions. So you can go up to a lot of partitions and a lot of EC2 instances. I think there is a particular limit regarding that, but then I would like you to read up on AWS docs regarding that. So for each partition, you get multiple EC2 instances within that partition. And then the EC2 will try to, keep your partitions as equal as possible. So if you have 3 partitions and you create EC2 instances in each of the partitions, it will try to keep it as equal as possible. So it will try to place like 6 EC2 instances across 3 partitions, like 2 on each partition. So over there also you reduce the likelihood of failure, but then you use it for distributed workloads like HBase or Hadoop or Cassandra related workloads, where you want that kind of capacity. So you place everything within a partition placement group. So, and while you create the partition placement group, always remember to specify the number of partitions, right? So I'll go ahead and stop the recording right now, but just know that we have studied about AMIs, we have studied about volume snapshots and creating snapshots based on a lifecycle policy. And then we have studied about security groups in the last class, Elastic IP today, and then placement groups where we have the cluster, spread, and partition placement groups. And then we have key paths, which we studied previously, which is a public key and a private key to log into your EC2 instance. And then we have studied about network interfaces, how it allocates public IP, private IP, how it has a MAC address, how it has a security group associated with it, how do we associate an Elastic IP with your EC2 instance or with the network interface. And then finally, how do you attach the network interface to a running EC2 instance, and that your EC2 instance can have multiple network interfaces associated with it, but it should all be from the same availability zone. And then finally, we also saw that we can monitor the traffic that goes through our network interfaces through a concept called as flow logs, where we'll be storing all of our logs in an S3 bucket or in a CloudWatch log group, which we'll study later. So now the next concept that we are going to study after a small break is called as load balancers. So I'm going to stop the recording, give you guys some time to go ahead and just look at these settings and work with those settings.